Hollywood has always looked like a dream: bright lights, flawless faces, and fame that seemed eternal. But behind that glitter lies a ruthless rule. One wrong step, one reckless word, or one scandal too loud, and the dream is over. Not with an official sentence, but with silence. The phone stops ringing, the contracts disappear, studio doors shut, and they never open again. Sometimes it's arrogance, sometimes it's defiance. And sometimes, it's simply refusing to play by rules no one dares to admit exist. In this video, we'll uncover 15 stars who went from the heights of fame to being banished by Hollywood itself. These aren't just tales of bad behavior or public meltdowns. They're glimpses into the machinery of an industry that builds idols one day and erases them the next. By the end, you may find yourself asking not only what happened to these stars, but why? And perhaps, whether Hollywood truly punishes mistakes or punishes those who dare to resist its silent empire. 1. Monique was Hollywood's golden girl, a force of raw talent who rose from stand-up comedy stages to the pinnacle of cinema. In 2009, Monique stunned the world with her performance in Precious, a role so harrowing and unforgettable it earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Overnight, she became a household name, the kind of actress studios fight to cast. Winning an Oscar should have been her entry into a new era of superstardom. For most, it is. For Monique, it was the beginning of exile. Behind the scenes, she refused to play the game. After Precious, Monique revealed that she was pressured to campaign for the film without compensation, traveling, attending events, and smiling for the cameras on her own dime, while studios profited from her success. When she declined, the whispers began. Executives branded her difficult, ungrateful, and hard to work with. Hollywood's power brokers don't hand out punishments in public. They erase you quietly. Offers dried up. Casting calls stopped coming. The same actress who once stood on the Oscar stage was suddenly unwelcome in the rooms she had just conquered. Monique herself called it what it was: blacklisting. She accused industry giants like Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, and Lee Daniels of contributing to her downfall. For her, telling the truth came at the highest cost a performer can pay: the loss of a career she had fought her whole life to build. And so, one of the most talented actresses of her generation became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you stand up to Hollywood's unspoken rules. 2. Megan Fox. She was once the face of a blockbuster era, the breakout star whose beauty and charisma helped turn Transformers into a global phenomenon. By her early 20s, Megan Fox had become the ultimate Hollywood it girl, the kind of actress splashed across magazine covers and whose presence alone could guarantee box office millions. To fans, she was untouchable, a rising icon with the world at her feet. But Hollywood has little patience for defiance. In 2009, at the height of her fame, Fox gave an interview that would change everything. When asked about her director Michael Bay, she compared him to a dictator like Hitler, she said, criticizing his controlling methods on set. The words exploded across headlines. Bay's defenders bristled. Steven Spielberg himself reportedly insisted she be removed from the franchise. Almost overnight, Megan Fox went from a central role in one of the biggest movie franchises of all time to being quietly written out of its next installment. What followed was a chilling silence. The calls slowed. The scripts arriving at her door lacked the prestige she once commanded. Behind closed doors, the label of unprofessional and difficult stuck, despite her raw talent and undeniable appeal. Fox later revealed she had endured toxic treatment in Hollywood, where objectification and exploitation were routine. Speaking out, she believed, cost her everything. Megan Fox's story is not just about a single quote, it's about how fragile stardom can be when power is challenged. She learned that in an industry built on image and obedience, one sentence can exile you, no matter how brightly you once shone. 3. Mickey Rourke. In the 1980s, Mickey Rourke wasn't just a star, he was the star. With his smoldering looks, magnetic screen presence, and performances in films like 9.5 Weeks and Angel Heart, critics called him the natural heir to Brando and De Niro. He was raw, dangerous, and undeniably captivating. Hollywood adored him, and audiences couldn't look away. For a time, Mickey Rourke seemed unstoppable, destined to become one of the greatest leading men of his generation. But the same fire that fueled his artistry also ignited his downfall. Rourke gained a reputation for being volatile on set, clashing with directors, storming off productions, and dismissing the very industry that had made him a household name. He was labeled uncontrollable, a nightmare for studios who needed stars to be bankable and reliable. Then, at the height of his fame, Rourke did the unthinkable. He walked away from Hollywood altogether to pursue a career in professional boxing. The decision shocked fans, but to the industry, it was confirmation that he was no longer worth the risk. The years in the ring left him battered physically and professionally. When Rourke returned to acting in the 1990s, Hollywood's doors were closed. His once handsome features had been scarred and surgically altered. The studios that once chased him now turned their backs, convinced his time had passed. It wasn't until 2008, with The Wrestler, that he clawed his way back into the spotlight, earning an Oscar nomination. Yet even that redemption was bittersweet. Rourke himself admitted he'd burned too many bridges to ever reclaim what he once had. Mickey Rourke's story is one of talent colliding with ego, rebellion, and self-destruction. Hollywood didn't just exile him, he helped exile himself. And in this town, there are no second chances for those who don't play by the rules. 4. Rose McGowan. In the late 1990s, Rose McGowan was everywhere. From her breakout in Scream to her cult status in Jawbreaker and her long run on Charmed, she was the epitome of cool, an actress with striking beauty, edge, and a fan base that adored her. Hollywood seemed wide open, ready to make her one of its enduring stars. But behind the glamour, McGowan was fighting a battle most of the world couldn't see. She was one of the first actresses to speak out against Harvey Weinstein, long before the Me Too movement became global headlines. She accused him of assault, and when she refused to stay silent, the machine turned on her. Roles that once flowed to her dried up. She was painted as unstable, too angry, and hard to work with. The same industry that had embraced her now treated her like a pariah. McGowan later revealed how deep the retaliation went. She claimed powerful figures blacklisted her, spreading whispers that damaged her reputation beyond repair. Casting directors stopped calling. Her once promising career unraveled, not because of lack of talent, but because she dared to expose a predator protected by the system. Even as the world later acknowledged her bravery, Hollywood's doors never truly reopened for her. Rose McGowan's story is not just about exile, it's about sacrifice. By speaking the truth, she gave up her career, her place in the spotlight, and the future Hollywood had promised her. Yet in doing so, she became something even larger than a star, a symbol of defiance, proof of what it costs to challenge the darkest corners of the entertainment industry. 5. Sinéad O'Connor. She was never a conventional star. With her shaved head, haunting voice, and unflinching honesty, Sinéad O'Connor broke into the spotlight in the late 1980s and early 1990s with a force few could ignore. Her rendition of Nothing Compares to You became a global anthem, cementing her as one of the most distinctive artists of her generation. For a moment, she wasn't just a singer, she was a cultural phenomenon. But Sinéad O'Connor never played by the industry's rules. In 1992, during a live performance on Saturday Night Live, she tore up a photograph of Pope John Paul II while declaring, "Fight the real enemy." It was a protest against abuse within the Catholic Church, an act of defiance years before the full scope of the scandal came to light. The reaction was immediate and brutal. The studio audience fell silent, the media vilified her, and Hollywood turned its back. Within days, she was blacklisted from television appearances, and condemned by the very industry that had once celebrated her. What should have been remembered as an act of courage became a scarlet letter. Concerts were boycotted, radio stations banned her songs, opportunities in film and music vanished. Cinead, who had spoken a truth the world wasn't ready to hear, paid the price with her career. Though she continued to make music and remained a powerful voice, she never again occupied the mainstream stage she once commanded. Sinead O'Connor's story is a reminder of how swiftly Hollywood and the entertainment world can erase those who refuse to conform. She wasn't undone by scandal in the usual sense, but by an act of protest too raw for its time, proof that in an industry built on illusion, truth is often the greatest offense. 6. Wesley Snipes. In the 1990s, Wesley Snipes was one of Hollywood's most bankable action stars. With hits like New Jack City, White Men Can't Jump, and the Blade trilogy, he became both a box office draw and a cultural icon. He wasn't just an action hero, he was the rare black leading man commanding big-budget franchises, proving he could carry a film on his shoulders. But Snipes' rise came crashing down when he faced off against a foe no studio would defend: the IRS. In 2008, he was convicted on charges of tax evasion, accused of failing to file returns on millions of dollars earned during his peak years. The trial made national headlines, turning a celebrated star into a cautionary tale. Sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, Snipes disappeared from Hollywood screens. By the time he was released, the industry had moved on. Studios, wary of controversy, hesitated to hand leading roles back to a man branded as reckless and financially irresponsible. Though he attempted a comeback with roles in films like The Expendables 3, he never regained the A-list status he once enjoyed. Behind the scenes, Snipes himself suggested his downfall wasn't just about taxes, but also about power, claiming the industry resented his confidence and independence. Wesley Snipes' story is as much about punishment as it is about perception. To Hollywood, a star who goes to prison becomes a liability, no matter how much talent they bring. For Snipes, the man who once embodied invincibility on screen, the ultimate exile came not from box office failure, but from the quiet decision of studios to close their doors. 7. Charlie Sheen. For years, Charlie Sheen was one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. From Platoon and Wall Street in the 1980s to his record-breaking run on 2.5 Men, he was both a critical and commercial success. By the late 2000s, Sheen was the highest-paid actor on television, earning nearly $2 million per episode. To audiences, he was charming, funny, and untouchably famous. But behind the laughter was a storm. Sheen's personal life spiraled out of control: public meltdowns, erratic interviews, substance abuse, and clashes with producers. His infamous tirades against 2.5 Men creator Chuck Lorre became tabloid sensations. At the height of the chaos in 2011, Warner Brothers fired Sheen from the show, effectively cutting off his most lucrative role. In one of the most stunning falls from grace in television history, the highest-paid actor in Hollywood became unemployable overnight. The industry didn't just turn its back, it locked its doors. While Sheen attempted to reinvent himself with anger management, the stigma of his meltdown lingered. Studios saw him as a liability, too unpredictable to insure, too volatile to trust with multi-million-dollar projects. Even when he revealed he was living with HIV, hoping to turn his narrative toward advocacy, the shadow of his scandals never fully lifted. Charlie Sheen's exile wasn't about a single mistake, it was about an implosion witnessed in real time, a living example of how fast Hollywood erases its stars when chaos threatens profit. Once the face of success, he became the cautionary tale of what happens when excess overtakes talent. 8. Lindsay Lohan. In the early 2000s, Lindsay Lohan was the very definition of a Hollywood darling. From her breakout in The Parent Trap to the iconic Mean Girls, she wasn't just a promising young actress, she was the face of a new generation of stars. Studios banked on her charm, her comedic timing, and her ability to draw both teen and adult audiences. At barely 20, she seemed destined to grow into one of Hollywood's most enduring leading ladies. But fame at a young age comes with a cost, and for Lohan, that cost was devastating. Her career began to unravel with a string of high-profile arrests, DUIs, and stints in rehab. The paparazzi turned her struggles into a spectacle, documenting every stumble as if it were part of a tragic script. By the mid-2000s, Lohan's name was no longer associated with box office hits, but with courtrooms, mugshots, and late-night jokes. For studios, the problem wasn't just her public image, it was reliability. Productions found her difficult to ensure, directors complained she was impossible to manage, and her reputation as a risk spread across town. Once a guaranteed draw, she was suddenly unhireable, exiled from the industry she had helped define. Even when she tried to stage comebacks, Hollywood kept its distance. Lindsay Lohan's story isn't just about self-destruction, it's about how quickly the industry abandons those who falter under its pressures. She was a prodigy who burned too bright, too fast, and Hollywood decided it was easier to erase her than to help her rebuild. For many, she became the tragic symbol of a system that chews up its brightest young talents and spits them out when the chaos becomes too costly. 9. Mel Gibson. For decades, Mel Gibson was Hollywood royalty. With Mad Max and Lethal Weapon, he became an international action icon, and later, as a director, he earned the industry's highest honor, an Academy Award for Braveheart. Few stars enjoyed his level of power. Gibson wasn't just acting in blockbusters, he was shaping them. At his peak, he was one of the most bankable figures in the world. But in the mid-2000s, his empire collapsed almost overnight. In 2006, Gibson was arrested for drunk driving, and during the incident, he launched into an anti-Semitic tirade that made headlines across the globe. The fallout was swift and brutal. Studios distanced themselves, public opinion turned, and Gibson's once unshakable reputation was in ruins. A few years later, further scandals, including racist and abusive recorded rants, cemented his image as toxic. Hollywood is an industry that thrives on image, and Gibson's had become poison. He was dropped from projects, his name disappeared from casting conversations, and for nearly a decade, he was considered untouchable. Directors and producers admitted privately that hiring him would be career suicide. The man who once ruled the box office was now locked out of the very system he had helped dominate. In time, Gibson clawed back some recognition with Hacksaw Ridge in 2016, which earned him another Oscar nomination. But his exile left a permanent scar. He was no longer the golden boy, but the cautionary tale of how even the most powerful can fall. For Hollywood, the message was clear. Talent may be extraordinary, but scandal is stronger. 10. Kevin Spacey. For years, Kevin Spacey was considered one of the finest actors of his generation. With 2 Academy Awards under his belt for The Usual Suspects and American Beauty, he commanded respect not only as a performer, but also as a cultural figure. His transition to television with House of Cards seemed to cement his status as untouchable, turning him into the face of prestige streaming at Netflix's rise. At his peak, Spacey was both critically acclaimed and commercially indispensable. Then, in 2017, everything changed. Multiple allegations of sexual misconduct surfaced, spanning decades. What began with one accusation quickly grew into a cascade of testimonies, many from men who claimed Spacey had used his power and influence to exploit or intimidate them. Hollywood, reeling from the Me Too movement, responded with unprecedented speed. Within days, Netflix severed ties, removing him from House of Cards. Ridley Scott famously erased Spacey from All the Money in the World, reshooting his scenes with Christopher Plummer just weeks before release. In an instant, Kevin Spacey went from award-winning powerhouse to industry exile. No major studio would hire him. No network would risk his name attached to a project. Though Spacey has denied the accusations and some cases have been dropped, the damage was irreversible. His career, once defined by brilliance, is now remembered for scandal. Kevin Spacey's downfall illustrates the ruthless efficiency of Hollywood's banishment system. When a star becomes a liability, even decades of artistry vanish overnight. His story isn't just about personal misconduct, it's about how quickly the industry can erase one of its brightest lights when the truth, or even the perception of it, comes to the surface. 11. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski was once regarded as one of cinema's great auteurs. With films like Rosemary's Baby, Chinatown, and The Pianist, he earned acclaim as a visionary director whose work shaped entire generations of filmmakers. Hollywood awarded him its highest honors, including the Academy Award for Best Director. For decades, his reputation as an artist seemed untouchable. But Polanski's name has long been shadowed by scandal. In 1977, he was arrested and charged with the sexual assault of a 13-year-old girl. Though he initially agreed to a plea deal, Polanski fled the United States before sentencing, escaping to Europe where he has lived ever since. His exile wasn't symbolic, it was literal. He became a fugitive from American justice, unable to set foot in Hollywood even as his films continued to win praise abroad. For years, the industry wrestled with his legacy. Some defended his genius, while others demanded accountability. The Academy still awarded him an Oscar in 2003, but he could not attend. By the 2010s, as the Me Too movement reshaped Hollywood, the tide turned decisively. In 2018, Polanski was expelled from the Academy, officially severing his ties with the very institution that had once celebrated him. Roman Polanski's story remains one of the most controversial in Hollywood history. A man hailed as a cinematic master, yet forever branded by an unforgivable crime. His exile is both legal and moral, a reminder that even brilliance cannot erase the weight of scandal. To Hollywood, Polanski is proof of the line between artistry and accountability, and the permanent shadow that falls when that line is crossed. 12. Kirk Cameron. In the 1980s, Kirk Cameron was America's sweetheart. As the charming teen heartthrob of the hit sitcom Growing Pains, he became one of television's most recognizable young stars. Magazines adored him, fans filled stadiums to catch a glimpse, and Hollywood envisioned a long career stretching from television into blockbuster films. He seemed destined to transition from child star into leading man without missing a beat. But Cameron's career took an unexpected turn. In his late teens, he experienced a profound religious conversion. With newfound zeal, he began rejecting storylines on Growing Pains that didn't align with his Christian beliefs. Scripts were rewritten, co-stars complained about his behavior, and producers found him increasingly difficult to work with. Hollywood, an industry that thrives on compromise, quickly grew wary of a star who refused to bend. When Growing Pains ended, Cameron discovered that the doors he expected to open had quietly closed. He found himself virtually blacklisted from mainstream projects. Instead, he reinvented himself in Christian cinema, starring in faith-based films like Left Behind and Fireproof. While those projects resonated with a niche audience, they underscored just how far Cameron had drifted from the Hollywood mainstream. Kirk Cameron's story isn't one of scandal in the traditional sense, but of ideology. His refusal to conform to the industry's expectations branded him as unmarketable to studios, effectively exiling him from the career path he once seemed destined to dominate. In the end, Hollywood didn't just move on it, shut him out, leaving him to build an entirely different kingdom outside its gates. 13. CeeLo Green. At the height of the 2010s, CeeLo Green was more than a singer, he was a pop culture fixture. With his soulful hit Forget You topping charts worldwide, and his larger-than-life persona lighting up NBC's The Voice, he seemed unstoppable. Hollywood embraced him not just as a musician but as a television personality, branding him as quirky, charismatic, and bankable. But CeeLo's career unraveled in a storm of controversy. In 2012, he was accused of sexual assault, a case that drew massive media attention. While he ultimately pleaded no contest to a charge of furnishing ecstasy, the allegations stained his public image. The damage worsened when CeeLo posted a series of troubling tweets suggesting that sex without memory did not equate to rape. The backlash was swift and merciless. Within days, he was forced to leave The Voice, and major networks distanced themselves from his name. Hollywood, an industry hypersensitive to public perception, wasted no time erasing him. Concerts were canceled, endorsements evaporated, and television opportunities dried up. Though CeeLo continued to release music, the momentum of his mainstream career never recovered. The man who once stood at the center of the spotlight was suddenly on the fringes, unwelcome in the spaces that had once celebrated him. CeeLo Green's downfall wasn't about fading talent. His voice remained as powerful as ever. It was about how quickly one scandal, amplified by words that fueled outrage, could exile a star from Hollywood's inner circle. His story is a reminder that in an era where image is currency, one moment of public fury can end even the brightest run. 14. Winona Ryder. In the 1990s, Winona Ryder was the embodiment of Hollywood cool. From Heathers to Edward Scissorhands and Girl, Interrupted, she was both a critical darling and a box office star. With her dark-eyed allure and effortless charm, Ryder wasn't just an actress, she was a generational icon, defining the spirit of an era. Directors wanted her, audiences adored her, and studios saw her as one of the most reliable names of the decade. But in 2001, Ryder's career hit a wall. Caught shoplifting over $5,000 worth of merchandise from Saks Fifth Avenue in Beverly Hills, she was arrested and charged with grand theft and vandalism. The trial became a media circus, splashing her face across tabloids with headlines that mocked her fall from grace. Though the incident seemed almost petty compared to the scandals of other stars, Hollywood reacted harshly. Suddenly, Ryder was no longer seen as a dependable leading lady. She was a liability. The exile wasn't formal, but it was absolute. Roles dried up. Once trusting studios stopped calling. For nearly a decade, Winona Ryder was relegated to small, forgettable projects. Her name synonymous not with her artistry, but with scandal. It was only in the mid-2010s, with her role in Netflix's Stranger Things, that she staged a remarkable comeback, proof that talent, though buried, could rise again. Winona Ryder's story is unique. Her banishment came not from violence or politics, but from a single act that forever altered her image. In Hollywood, perception is everything, and Ryder learned how quickly a beloved star can be erased when their flaws are exposed. Her journey from icon to outcast and back again remains one of the most haunting cautionary tales in modern cinema. 15. Mira Sorvino. In the mid-1990s, Mira Sorvino was on top of the world. With her radiant performance in Mighty Aphrodite, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 1996, instantly joining Hollywood's A-list. Beautiful, talented, and versatile, she seemed destined for a long career filled with prestige roles and blockbuster opportunities. For a time, Sorvino was the actress everyone wanted. But just as quickly as her star rose, it seemed to vanish. By the early 2000s, Sorvino's presence on screen had diminished dramatically, leaving fans and critics alike wondering what had happened. The answer, revealed years later, was chilling. Sorvino was one of the many actresses who accused Harvey Weinstein of harassment. After rejecting his advances, she discovered her career had been quietly sabotaged. Directors stopped offering roles. Studios no longer returned calls. Behind the scenes, Weinstein allegedly used his influence to blacklist her from major productions. The impact was devastating. Sorvino, who should have been building on her Oscar momentum, instead found herself locked out of the industry she had conquered. It wasn't until the rise of the Me Too movement that the truth fully came to light. Peter Jackson even admitted that Sorvino was deliberately kept off the Lord of the Rings casting list because of Weinstein's behind-the-scenes pressure. Mira Sorvino's story is one of wasted potential not because of her own choices, but because of the system's cruelty. She is living proof of how power in Hollywood could silence and exile a woman for nothing more than saying no. Though she continues to work today, her absence from the prime years of her career remains one of Hollywood's darkest injustices. Hollywood loves to sell the dream, the lights, the fame, the idea that once you've made it, you'll shine forever. But these stories prove the opposite. Stardom in Tinseltown isn't permanent. It's conditional. One wrong move, one act of defiance, or even one refusal to play the unspoken game, and the machine can erase you overnight. From Monique to Mira Sorvino, from action legends like Wesley Snipes to icons like Winona Ryder, the lesson is clear. Talent alone doesn't guarantee survival. In Hollywood, power protects itself. Some were undone by their own choices, others by scandal, and still more by daring to speak truth in an industry that rewards silence. The price of rebellion is exile, and the cost of honesty can be a career. But there's another truth buried here: audiences don't forget. Even after years of absence, stars like Mickey Rourke and Winona Ryder proved that comebacks are possible. Hollywood may close its doors, but the people who loved their work still remember, still watch, still care. And sometimes, that memory is stronger than the system that tried to erase them. So the question is yours. Were these stars punished justly for their mistakes, or were they victims of an industry built on fear and control? Do you see them as cautionary tales, or as martyrs who refused to bow to Hollywood's silent empire? If you've stayed with us to the end, tell us what you think in the comments. And if you want to uncover more of the secrets this town doesn't want you to know, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because behind every star that shines there's a story Hollywood hopes you'll never hear.